mouth. And so I want to deal with this lamb that speaks. And I break it down tonight into really three basic parts. And we'll use the Gospels to try to bring this color out in the life of Jesus. So Jesus, I want to deal with Jesus speaks because it's the vocalization of Jesus. It's what comes out of his mouth that makes Jesus who he is. I want to talk about Jesus speaks to the world. We'll take a look at how those in the outside of the circle encountered Jesus. We've had our taste of this with Pilate in our Tuesday studies because Pilate is grilling Jesus and questioning Jesus, and you see Jesus clam up a little bit in the face of the world. But there are moments in the Gospels when Jesus is not silent in his speaking to the world. And I want to show you what happens when Jesus is not silent in speaking to the world. And then finally, Jesus speaks to his own. And that's always my favorite because I'm one of his, and so are you. And so for me, it's great to end there where I get to see what Jesus says to me and what I can do with that and what equipment I can take out of hearing the voice of who Jesus is. So I want to talk about in general Jesus speaking, and to do so, I'm going to take you back to what was the very first verse from our John study, John chapter 1, verse 1. I've probably quoted this 50 times, but I want you to see it again. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. The reason I put this up yet again is because that word is so vital to understanding who Jesus is. In the beginning was the Logos. It's the meaning and the expression of all of heaven. And whenever this chapter unfolds a little bit further, it tells us that the Word, the Logos, became flesh and dwelt among us. It tabernacled among us. So God took the spoken word and wrapped it up in the man Christ Jesus. So whatever Jesus was saying when he was on this earth was not something new. It was the exact same words spoken at the creation of the world. The reason it's so important to watch John reinterpret the creation, Genesis 1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. John 1, in the beginning was the Logos was with God, the Logos was God. The Logos became flesh. John's doing this. Jesus is a part of the recreation of the world. But not only that, whatever God said in Genesis, Logos, whatever went out and hovered over darkness and brought order, whatever put an end to chaos, whatever brought man out of the dirt, whatever brought birds out of the sky and fish out of the sea, that's the Logos of God. That Logos put a human body on and became a man named Jesus. It wasn't as if Jesus changed the voice of God. It was that Jesus shows us the voice of God. So what Jesus says was not a new way of dealing with man. It was the way God always dealt with man. Everything else that clouds that up between Genesis and John isn't God. Let me say that again. It can't be God. There's no way around this reality. In the beginning, God created. Fast forward. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we knew him as the Son of God. In other words, what we saw in Jesus is exactly who God was in Genesis. What we saw in Jesus was not God changing, softening. No, it was God. Anything else has muddied the waters. And so the Lamb is speaking what the Father was always speaking. He's saying to us what he was always trying to say to us. And he hasn't changed. So whatever comes out of his mouth is a reflection of the Creator God. It's a reflection of the chaos buster. It's because that's what God did, is he spoke into the void and he cleaned it up and he cleared it up. But I want to take that then into the person of Jesus, who I believe, I'm crazy enough to believe in the man Jesus, the invisible man Jesus, as still being relevant in the world today. That's really what makes us who we are as believers, is we believe in the resurrected Jesus. I believe in the historical Jesus, but I don't put faith in the historical Jesus. I put faith in the resurrected Jesus. And for me, what that means is my faith is in that which is not seen. You know, people can talk about what was real in the Bible and what was myth. Can we prove this really happened, or did that not happen? And my response to those things is, frankly, I don't really care. I know that I'm not being lazy with that, but when you go, was Noah's Ark a real boat? Did he really put all those animals on there and then float? Was there a flood that covered the whole earth? I go, I don't really care. I think you're missing the point. There's a point to the story that has nothing to do with the historicity of it. I think it tells me a bigger story. And so I get the arguments, I get the defense of the arguments. I'm not worried about where we land on that, because my faith is not built on the timeline, it's not built on the geography, it's not built on the history, it's built on the resurrected Jesus. So I really do believe that Jesus exists in the realm of the Spirit, in the invisible realm, and that He manifests Himself in our lives. I think if He wants to show up and show someone, have a physical revelation of Him, He can do whatever He wants to do. He did it repeatedly in the New Testament. I've heard plenty of testimonies of people who've had Jesus to do that in their lives now. I don't argue with that or fight that. My faith is not in the fact that I've seen Him do that, but my faith is in the resurrected Jesus. And if that's the case, and in the beginning was the Word, and that was God talking, and then Jesus showed us God talking, and if Jesus is still Jesus, then He's still talking. And if He's still talking, He's still saying what His dad said. He's still saying the same creative, chaos-destroying words. And that means when we open our mouths and say, "Thus saith the Lord," man, He better have said it. Because we're playing with something pretty big there. You at least better be pretty confident you've been spending time with Him, because if it doesn't line up with "in the beginning was the Word" and then what we know the Word manifests out in Revelation, don't take the Lord's name in vain and slap "Thus saith the Lord" on it.